Welcome to the Meetings Podcast, the meeting organizer's podcast source for what's new in the meetings and events industry. Meetings Podcast is a conversation with a variety of voices that looks at events, meetings, and media. Meetings Podcast is sponsored by IMEX America, America's worldwide exhibition for incentive travel, meetings, and events.
Hey, Meetings Podcast listeners, this is Mike. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I want to thank our sponsors. First of all, of course, IMEX America, IMEX Frankfurt, everything IMEX. Thank you, IMEX. Also wanted to thank the show, not thank the show, but thank 99 Designs, the one-stop shop for all things graphic design related. You know, owning a production company, I know how much designing logos takes a ton of time and expense. Of course, I have graphic designers that I've been using for years, not been using, but working with. And they can charge a little bit of money, and it can get up to around $300, not $300, $3,000 for doing, get the right look and feel for our shows. But if you, you don't need a production company. You might want to just put together a logo for something fun, or come up with some business cards, banners for websites, that kind of stuff. 99 Designs is a great place to do some brainstorming, also, because you can get in there, put in your ideas, what you're looking for, and see the mock-ups and the sketches will come rolling in, all the ideas. And so how it works is basically designers from all over the world will send you sketches and mock-ups, as I just said, for your project. And so you can just choose which one is your favorite, and then you can work with that one designer to make it perfect. That's it. If you don't like any of them, you get your money back. So go on over to tinyurl.com/meetings99, and that's the Meetings Podcast affiliate link. So if you want to throw a bone to Meetings Podcast, head on over there. 99 Designs, go on over. It's tinyurl.com/meetings99. And so let's get right into the show. Today we have a great person we are speaking to, not that everyone is great on here. He is Don Gabor, and he talks about talking, basically, about communicating better, how to do small talk. Pretty interesting guy. Little music, a little fun. I hope you enjoy the show. It's a little different. So enjoy, and I'll be back after the show to kind of fill in any gaps. And thanking the sponsors like I do. I thank them because I really appreciate them. Please support them. And that's it. See you after the show. Welcome back to the Meetings Podcast. This is Mike McAllen from Grass Shack Events and Media and AV for Planners. And on today's show, we have Don Gabor. Hi, Don.
Hello, Mike.
I appreciate you talking to me. I personally had some technical difficulties, and you've been very patient, and I appreciate that.
Happy to be here. Happy to be anywhere, actually.
Okay, so Don Gabor is a professional speaker, coach, and the author of How to Start a Conversation and Make Friends, plus 12 books and audio programs published by Simon & Schuster, Random House, Prentice Hall, McGraw-Hall, and others. Since 1980, Don has offered customized programs that are fast-paced, content-rich, highly interactive, and entertaining. He tells audiences not only what to do to become a savvy networker, but exactly how to do it with plenty of opportunity for practice and feedback. So that's you, Don.
That sounds like me.
Yeah, it is. And so let's get this thing rolling. First off, if you are listening and not driving your car or at the gym or something, you can go to dongabor.com and there's everything Don there. But first, let's start out with your favorite quote, Don.
There's Aristotle and there's Socrates and all these great thinkers. But the quote that's on my computer, it's been on my computer for a long time, I found in a Chinese fortune cookie. And it goes like this: "You will go far. Just be sure to come back." And I thought about that. I saw it. I said, this is really a good thing to live by, because in what I do for a living and what a lot of people do for a living, we really are striving and trying to work hard to get to some specific goal. But I think it's also really important to kind of remember where you come from and not get too carried away with just achieving things. It's kind of just be aware of of where you are and what you want to do at that moment. So go far, but be sure to come back.
Very cool. Being present.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of distractions, and when you're in business or you're striving for something, it's really easy to get kind of carried away. And so I think that quote just kind of keeps me, just sort of focused on what I have to do right in front of me and not get sidetracked by a lot of distractions.
Very cool, very cool. So let's jump into the path, what leads you to us. Why don't you tell us how you got into the events and meetings industry, and you've been in it for a while.
Yeah, I've been writing and speaking on the topic of conversation since 1980, but I think my real first, feeling that this was a possibility of a profession for me came when I was in ninth grade in Mr. Eisenberger's class, and I was gabbing next to my classmates and trying to make everybody laugh. And Mr. Eisenberger asked me some question which I don't remember, and Mr. Eisenberger was a rather serious teacher, and everybody was Mr. Gabor, and those kind of last name only things, and so for some reason I don't really remember what the question was, but I did answer the question, and everybody looked at Mr. Eisenberger and looked at me, and he said to me, he goes, "Mr. Gabor, you are the only person that I've ever met who can talk and listen at the same time.
Wow.
Now get out." So I thought, well, and as I was leaving the room, I took that as a bit of career advice, and I thought, well, okay, at least that's something I know I can do. So, I mean, I'm kind of just joking here, but really my career as a writer and speaker, it really grows out of a teaching background. I've been teaching one thing or another since I was a teenager, starting with guitar. But what really kind of moved me in this direction was that I always felt comfortable talking to people and, skipping over education and a lot of other jobs in between. When I got to New York, I found I was asked to help an adult education program with some of their teachers putting together their classes, and how to start a conversation and make friends was a class that this organization asked me to teach, and that was in 1980. And it all really started at that point. I did a couple months worth of research and started teaching that class, and in 3 hours, people were learning something that they could take away and put into practice in their businesses and in their home life and their social life. And so that's where it began. And a book and audio tapes started there, and it's been 30 plus years ever since doing this kind of work. And I'm still learning about how to talk to people. So it's a topic that you can't learn enough about.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk more about your books coming up, but as you're talking, and what caught my eye about why I wanted to talk to you was that in this day and age, so many people don't even talk on the phone, let alone, to each other. I mean, to each other, it's like they're texting and they're using Snapchat and they're using Facebook. Kind of the art of communication is so important nowadays, I think. I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it is important. It's always been important. It's always been changing, though, if you think about it. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago when, somebody was in their home and they didn't have a telephone. And if they wanted to communicate with somebody, they had to go visit them or talk over the back fence or sit down in a room and my goodness, have a face-to-face conversation. Can you imagine that? God, what can you think of next? And then all of a sudden, here comes, this telephone. What an invasion of privacy. People, were really upset. And, fast forward, I don't know, whatever it is, 80 or how many ever years since, Bell invented the telephone. And, so my point is that technology that we have today is just another way that we can communicate. But I have seen a distinct degrading of people's ability to just sit down and have a face-to-face conversation without having, something in their hands to push a button, or they don't have something to refer to. So there's two sides to the technology. I think it's great. You can communicate with people all over the world with the technology, whether it be Skype or some of the other technologies, Facebook and so on. But I do not think that it, in fact, really totally replaces interpersonal face-to-face communication, because that's the source where we get the most information from an individual, is when we see him or her in front of us, and we hear that voice and we see their gestures, some of which we can see through technology, but most we can't.
And how is this? What's the biggest challenge you've encountered in taking your path of this quest of getting people to be able to talk to each other and become friends, basically?
I'd say one of the biggest challenges in terms of the topic of conversation and the skill involved, other than there are people that don't think it's all that important, is that a lot of people think that small talk is irrelevant or a waste of time. And over the years, I've been described as a small talk expert. And the reason that I kind of had that nickname, among other nicknames, Don Gabor being one, is that people think that just having a light, uneventful type of conversation doesn't have any merit. And over the years, I've been trying to, and I think successfully up to a point, debunk that myth, because what happens is when people are having small talk or engaged in small talk, there's really a lot more going on than some people may realize. First of all, it shows that you're willing to interact and to converse with somebody, to actually have an exchange. And it also gives you an opportunity to exchange information quickly and in an informal manner. So you're not pulling out a resume or sending some information, in an email where somebody has to read. You're exchanging information back and forth casually, but yet there's value in that. And the value is the type of information that you choose to reveal to an individual in this informal setting. So you have an opportunity to paint a picture of who you are for individuals in a way that seems natural. So when people say, "Oh, I don't think small talk is, it's a waste of time, and I don't think there's, I don't like to engage in it. I really want to talk about deep, meaningful conversations." Well, I already know what's going on there. These people who say that or feel that way are really uncomfortable making that exchange because they're really not sure what to do. And I've spent years, teaching people how easy it is to have those kind of conversations, and that the value of small talk is it's a springboard to having deeper conversations or more meaningful conversations, or finding those common interests that really, I believe, are the part of the goal of having a conversation with people. So, small talk has been one of those goals one of those obstacles that I think people are beginning to get the message now, because a lot of people are writing books about small talk.
Yeah.
Not just me.
Yeah, you do hear that a lot. I think, like my wife says that all the time. "Oh, I hate the small talk at cocktail parties, or things like that." She's always saying that, and I always kind of like it. I'm kind of the opposite, but
Yeah.
I mean, I like to meet and ask people questions. I figure, well, that's why I do this podcast too. So I like to ask questions, find out about people.
When people say they hate small talk, you see, it's a signal to me that says, well, they're really not sure what to do. Mm-hmm. That's what that means to me. It doesn't mean that they're not a good person. It doesn't mean that they're not interesting, and it doesn't mean that they really don't want to talk. It just means to me that they're not really sure how to engage in this ritual dance that is really critical to breaking the ice with people. I mean, people say they don't like to make small talk, but they want to talk about, deep, serious topics. But as soon as they start talking about certain types of topics, they could either be very controversial, or they could be polarizing. They could be very eclectic. In other words, they could be about a topic that maybe they have a lot of interest in, but who else in the room cares about eight-legged insects or spiders or whatever it might be that you're talking about, or technology or whatever it might be. So, the idea behind small talk is that you can kind of explore very gently and quickly topics where you have mutual interest and topics that you don't before jumping in. So people who say they hate small talk, what they're really saying is they don't know how to engage in it. And that's where, funny enough, I made a whole career out of how to start a conversation based on around that skill set.
So let's just kind of jump into that. So let's talk about currently. So you do presentations, and you do write a lot of books. So let's talk about. Let's start out with your books. I guess they kind of tie in together, though. Obviously, I mean,
well, sure, yeah. I mean, the books that I have written over the years, they all have to do with interpersonal communication skills. How to start a conversation and make friends is really based around basic communication skills, body language, asking open and closed-ended questions, how to get the conversation going in a natural way. I'm not a therapist or psychologist, so I don't approach it from a very, whatever happened in your childhood kind of thing. I mean, I just don't do it that way. I don't have the training or the skills, or I don't really see that as necessary. I approach it as if I was teaching somebody how to play the guitar, or if you were to learn how to ride a bike or use a computer. There's some basic skill sets. So that book really spells those out. And I think the success of that book, it's in its third edition. I mean, not third printing. It's about 750,000 copies have been sold over the years. And it's been translated into 24 foreign languages. So the success of the book really, I believe, has to do with it's just easy to read. The concepts are universal to an American style of communication, and that's kind of a key point. So some of the other books have to do with assertiveness and more networking skills and goal-setting skills, some of the other books that I've written, but they all kind of boil down to this ability. This is my focus, my take on it anyway. The ability to connect with people. That's what it really comes down to is how you as an individual can reach out and make a connection with other people. And in my workshops, the focus of that is really networking, and primarily networking for business. So how to start a conversation and make friends. These are skills that you can use in any social, business, or personal setting. But my workshops really tend to be more towards building business connections and networking. And that's where for the last, maybe 15 years I've been spending most of my speaking time is in those formats.
Very cool. And so the workshops, plus you do keynote presentations also?
My presentations are really interactive. They're whether they're keynotes or whether they are breakout sessions. They really are oriented towards interactivity, and so it could be in front of an audience of 300, or it could be in a workshop, a half-day workshop of 30. The audience could be, for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, so it really varies. But my focus is on presenting communication skills, giving people an opportunity to practice them and interact with me and the rest of the people in the room. And then when they leave the room, they're going out with something that they didn't come in with that they can use in their business and hopefully in their social and personal lives too.
Very cool. Okay, so what kind of stuff, take us through kind of a typical day. What do you have any kind of stuff that really works right now? Or do you have a morning ritual of something, or food or exercise, or what do you search the web for something every morning? What do you do there?
I guess I'm a routine-oriented person. When I'm writing a book, my routine is very kind of rigid in a sense. I mean, I'm up in the morning. Really, it's cat care first thing in the morning. I live in Brooklyn, New York, with my wife and 3 indoor cats and 4 outdoor cats, and so these animals, and I'm not putting my wife in that category. They seem to dictate a lot of what goes on around here. But once the food tending is taken care of, and I'm a food lover, by the way, so I'm kind of oriented around a good breakfast. And I mean, not I'm not crazy, but I have a fairly healthy breakfast. And but then I'm at my computer writing, working on whatever chapter or whatever part of a book that I need to get done. I kind of have a routine where I have a writing schedule, and I generally, when I'm writing books, will produce anywhere from 4 to 6 pages a day, and that's day in and day out. They may not be good pages, but that's how I kind of keep moving through. And so, but also during the day, I'll go out in the backyard. I like to take breaks, and of course the cats are telling me it's time for their snack, so I have to go down and give them a snack. But I'll run around out in the backyard, and if it's during a nice time of the year, I've got a garden growing out in back, a vegetable garden, so I'll do a little 15, 20 minutes tending, and then I'll pop back upstairs and up through towards the midday. I'll finish my writing routine. And then I'm off to the post office, which is about 3/4 of a mile away. So I walk there. I don't have a car. Been living in Brooklyn, New York since 1979, and never owned a car here. Don't need one. So I'm walking a lot, and doing my little shopping along the way. We have lots of little stores here that I like to stop in to get this or that or the other. And then I may go back and do more editing, writing, and then I might take a little afternoon walk up into an area near where we live, a couple blocks away. It's called Greenwood Cemetery. Now, you might think it's kind of strange to go walking in a cemetery, but this cemetery is one of the most famous cemeteries in the country. It's called Greenwood Cemetery, and it's a landmark, a historical landmark, and there's something like 500,000 people who've been buried in this place, and it's on this, covers 400 acres. It's a very beautiful. It's not really. It's partially landscaped, but mostly it's natural. There are many famous people buried there, and it's just a great place to walk. It's very quiet, not a lot of conversation going on. but so I like to do that. A quick hour, and then back, and then I like to cook dinner, and then I spend usually in the evening. Though it's not work time mostly. And so that's kind of a typical writing day, that's kind of how it works. If I'm working on a presentation for a client, then instead of writing the 6 pages of a book, I'll be working on my presentation, my PowerPoint presentation, or I might be writing a little song that goes with the presentation because I use my ukulele in my presentations, in my networking presentations. So I like to write little songs that kind of summarize key points that I'll be presenting in my program. So that's kind of my typical day.
Very cool. Yeah, and I noticed you have a blog too. I saw that you were interesting to write in there too. I just pulled up the one that was 10 ways to avoid political arguments at the Thanksgiving table, which I think is very good.
What do you mean by that? So, who says?
Yeah, so that's interesting.
It's funny. I just heard somebody say on the radio, they said, I really like to have those kind of arguments at the table, at holiday tables. And I'm thinking, oh, man, what's wrong with this person? And the person saying, well, it's really good to find out what people really think and what they really feel about these things. And I'm thinking, okay, that's really going to do wonders for people's digestion, and especially when they start throwing food. What people don't understand sometimes, and this is where I'm kind of making a joke about it, but I'm really serious, is that they don't understand the damage that sometimes they can do at a family event or in these kind of holiday get-togethers where people, they think they're going to change somebody's mind. I know from personal experience it just doesn't work. So that's why I put stuff like that on my blog, just to kind of, keep it in mind that your words have power. They affect people. And just because you have an opinion doesn't mean that you always have to share it with someone.
Right.
And, sometimes there's a time to do that, but those holiday get-togethers or networking events are not the place for it.
Now, when you do your writing, how do you write? Do you write in Word, or do you have what do you use to write your books? How do you keep track of everything?
Well,
do you write on paper, or do you do?
No, I use Word, but I'm a big believer in outlining. I help people write books too. It's another part of my business as a writing coach, and I help people write books. And the biggest problem people have is when it comes to writing is organizing their ideas. So I have to thank my 5th grade teacher, Miss Elwell. I called her Miss Inkwell, but this is my nature. She taught me how to outline, and to this very day, when I'm writing, I always will outline chapters or whatever it is I'm writing. And the reason and when people come to me, they say, well, Don, I want to write a book, or I want to write an article, or whatever it might be. I said, well, okay, let's put our ideas down in an outline first. They go, I don't really want to do that. I like to be spontaneous. I like to put it out there and just let it all hang out. And then I go back and think, well, okay, you like to do it the hard way. And they go, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, every word, every sentence that you write, every paragraph that you write, you're going to have to rewrite that and edit it, many, many times. And it's just a lot easier to organize your ideas in 1 or 2 words or a phrase and see how they all hang together in an outline, and then move it around before you start writing sentences and paragraphs. Now, this is for nonfiction. And so I use outlining as a big part of my process, so that when I'm ready to put those sentences together, at least the concepts or the ideas are generally in order, not always. But I do a lot of rewriting. Those people who say, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to say. I'm not going to put anything down until it's all perfectly in my head. And I'm thinking, well, that'll be never, because there are very few Mozarts around. Every once in a while, every couple hundred years, maybe a Mozart or a Beethoven or some person who's really unbelievably talented in what they do comes along. But most of us are not of that ilk. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And so my point here is it takes a lot of writing is rewriting. And so I spend a lot of time organizing and then writing and rewriting. And I have one tool that I have been telling people about that nobody seems to know about. So I'm going to tell you and your audience right now. And it's a great tool. It's on Word, and it's called text-to-speech. And you can find it in I won't explain exactly how to do it, because if you go to Word and click on or Google text-to-speech, you'll see it, and it'll tell you how to do this. It takes about 5 minutes to set it up. But basically what it does is this. Whatever you write in text, in a Word form, a paragraph or sentence or whatever it might be, and you block it and you click on this little icon, it will read it back to you out loud. Text-to-speech. And I have found this the most useful editorial and copy editing tool I've ever known, because it's real easy to read whatever you've written and miss a lot of things that anybody else who would read it would see. In other words, a missing word, your brain will fill that missing word in. Even your spell check will miss certain things. They'll find spelling mistakes, but sometimes they will not. Spell check won't find certain other kinds of grammatical mistakes or things that just sound clunky. And a lot of times the way we write sometimes just sounds clunky, or maybe a half a sentence got deleted and the other half is sitting there somewhere. So anyway, that is a tool that I use all the time. And so there's a couple little writing tips for you.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I will use that. I wanted to also, I didn't want to gloss over your coaching either. I'm sorry I didn't say that earlier when I was asking you about, what you do. That this day too, it's so much easier for people to publish, that your services are pretty amazing, because that's what people are looking for. I mean, in the last 3 interviews I've done, people are writing books, and they're having such a hard time with it. It's really a great service.
Well, book writing, I'm a big proponent of writing and speaking as a way to build your image in your industry, to rise above your competitors, and just to define your expertise. And so I'm always encouraging people to do that, but I always tell people the same thing. It's not an easy undertaking. And if you think that you can just go tape a speech and get it transcribed and turn it into a book, and you think that's going to work, well, good luck, pal, because it just doesn't work that way. And so my point here is that it is a big effort, but it's a worthwhile effort if you're willing to put in the effort for to achieve the goal. What people sometimes don't remember or don't realize is that once something's in print, you can't get it back. You can't. It's out there. And so I'm always telling people, be very careful what you write, what you tell people to do, because you could tell them, you can be making some, just off the cuff remark, a glib remark, and somebody will do, take you literally and do it. So you have to be careful. But the point also here is that, and what my coaching really kind of what I orient my coaching is to help people take what they know and put it in either a oral or a written form that's going to help other people achieve their goals. I mean, that's what self-help books are all about, as far as my take on them is. So the benefit is not only to the people that you're writing for, but to oneself, because by writing, you really help define your ideas, and clarifying your own ideas is really a big part of the writing and speaking process. And for me, that's kind of a fun thing to do. And that's what most people come to me to help them do. I don't like to particularly line edit, every word in somebody's book, but I'll help a person, a client, take what they want to do and put their ideas in a organized fashion so that they'll be able to connect with their audience.
Yeah, and I was reading through your sessions and how they work, and it's if anyone's really interested, head on over to dongabor.com/coaching, because it's really a great setup on how the process is for working with you. So, Don, what did you want to be as a kid?
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Ah.
As a kid, I just liked animals and dogs in particular, and I wanted to be a veterinarian. And
you say dogs in particular, and you have all these cats.
Yeah, well, I had a dog for a long time, and I really am kind of a home vet. I've done a lot of home veterinarian. But when I reached chemistry class, something really shocking happened. I really didn't understand much of what was going on in that class, and I realized that my skill set, between not having a high aptitude for math and even a lower aptitude for chemistry, it became abundantly clear that this was not going to be my future. So, but I still, have spent a lot of time nursing, cats and dogs over the years back to health here in the home. But that's what I wanted to be as a kid. But actually, my career as a book person started at about the age, I'd say, maybe 6 or 7, maybe about 6 years old. That's when my real career really started about then, and that was selling books. And what happened then, and I really liked it then too, is my mother would buy me these golden books, these little kids' books. And I would sort of read them, I guess. And then I put them in my little red wagon. And this was in Long Beach, California in the 50s. Shows you how old I am now. So, and I'd take my little red wagon around the corner, and I'd go up to people's doors, and I'd knock on the door, and the door would open. Hey, Mrs. Oshesky, you want to buy some books? Oh, hi, Donnie. What are you doing? I'm selling some books. You want to buy some books? And so Mrs. Oshesky and a bunch of the other neighbors would buy my books for a nickel apiece. And I'd go back home, and my mother would say, Donnie, where are all your books? I'd, take out a pocket full of nickels and, and she'd go out and buy me some more books and we'd read them. And I'm still selling books today.
How funny.
So, it's funny what people do as kids. It's interesting, when you ask that question, because it really, it almost represents that raw, unfiltered desire for something. You're not old enough to be told you can't do it or you're not this or that. So it's it's a great question. And I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I'm still doing what I was doing when I was a kid.
That's
just
great.
been paid for it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes.
Yeah. What sometimes? What book do you gift others?
What book do I gift others?
Yeah, is there something, some book that you like to gift? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously you probably give a lot of your own books, but
I gift a lot of people my book.
yeah,
Those are the books that I gift a lot of. I like to gift. More recently, I'm gifting another book that I just have currently written. Two books I've currently written and published this year. I've been giving a lot of copies to.
you can say your own though too.
Yeah, I mean that's that. I mean I give away a lot of books,
And what are you have a couple of new books that aren't necessarily they're not about networking, correct?
Yeah, I have two books. It's funny how when you ask that question, what did you want to be as a kid, and I kind of was talking about the vet and the book selling, but I always like to write, and so anyway, I have two books that I've put together this year. Well, they just came out this year, but they're very, very long-term projects. One is a spy novel that took 13 years to put together with a co-author. It's called Laugh of the Hyenas, and it takes place in the years 1938 to 1941 in Paris, Oslo, Norway, Istanbul, Turkey, and Sofia, Bulgaria. And that was a lot of fun to write. And it was a fiction. And there's sex and violence and murder and mayhem and betrayal and all that good stuff. So I used my writing skills from the nonfiction side and researching skills to write that book with a co-author who is Bulgarian and who has unfortunately passed away several years ago. But that was one of those books that sat in my office for a long time, not finished.
Good for you. That's awesome. You finished it.
So I just decided this year that this was going to be the year to finish that. And so I've been giving that book to people, and I've been getting very, very good reviews. It's a fast read, and I think it's pretty good. So anyway, that's one. And then another book that is really the one that I'm really focusing on now even more is called Chef's Choice. 22 culinary masters tell how Japanese food culture influenced their careers in cuisine.
Wow.
And this I co-authored with a client of mine, a woman who owns a Japanese restaurant supply import business, and she specializes in Japanese chef knives. And she's been in business 30 years. The business is called Korin, Korin. And she's been in business here in New York since the early 80s, and many chefs, very high-level chefs and very successful chefs are her customers and friends. And she and I interviewed 22 of these chefs. Some are French, some are Japanese, some are American, one is Australian, living in Japan, cooking Italian. But all these chefs we interviewed with the idea in mind of how the Japanese food culture has influenced their cooking and careers. And that was a 7-year project. Wow. So some of these projects can take a long time.
Yeah.
That's why I say you really have to want to write a book, and I'm one of those types that I guess I really like writing books. So, but this book has been it was quite fascinating because I learned a lot. I'm a food guy. I learned I don't want to be a professional chef. That's just far too difficult of a profession and dangerous, and knives and fire and broken things and slippery floors and all that. But I also learned, and it's interesting with this book, we learned not just about the Japanese food culture and the chef culture and restaurant business, but also about success and how these people approach what they do, and the lessons that we got from them really apply to just anybody who has a goal or a dream. And so I've been gifting that book to people,
That's very interesting.
and we're selling it, and it's for sale on Amazon.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just as she's seen now, this is just a question I'm kind of wondering, because all these people are writing books all the time now. Is it helping her business? Do you think by doing this, her knife business?
Well, this was one of the goals, was to really share her love of her culture. I mean, she's a U.S. citizen. She's been here for 30 plus years, but she was born and raised in Japan, and she goes back and forth to Japan frequently. And she has a nonprofit organization it's called the Gohan Society, whose mission is to bridge the culinary gap between Japan and the United States. And so her goal was to share her culture with Americans and people who are interested. And the byproduct, I believe, yes, it will help her business, because I think people will see the value of what goes into the products that she's importing into the United States. Her customers used to be primarily restaurants, but now, over the last 10 years or so, 12 years, people like me, who I like to cook and I like to eat, and I like the way food looks, and I happen to like Japanese food as well, but I don't cook Japanese food. People see the value of these kinds of products in their own cooking and in their own. So, yeah, I believe it's going to help the business, but that's not the primary reason that we wrote the book.
It's so interesting, and also looking at the cover, it's like, if you culinary masters, they're not Japanese. They're all sorts of ethnicities, and it looks like, I can see from the cover, it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that's very cool for the listeners to check out. I mean, I'm also love to cook, and yeah, and so
well,
that's,
if you love to cook, you'll love Japanese knives. But there are no recipes in the book, although some of the chefs will talk about how they prepare a particular meal that they happen to be talking, explaining to us. And there's no beautiful pictures of food, and so it's not a glossy kind of book. We're selling the book for $15, so it's certainly a reasonable price. But the value it's fascinating to learn about the culture, and what's interesting again about the chefs is that they all approach things somewhat differently. Some people will cook the same meal. They want that dish cooked the same way 1,000 times, and another chef will only cook a meal once. Never cook the same meal again. They'll hand that off to somebody else in the restaurant, or they just won't cook that meal again. But their mentalities and their approaches are quite different. Some people will draw out the meal on a piece of paper before they even go shopping. Other people don't know what they're going to make until they go to the market. But they all share some common standards, and that is their number one goal is to please their customer, to please the person. So I see them as very nurturing kind of people. They want to feed people. They want people to be satisfied with what they're eating. And so, this is just, it's kind of an interesting topic for me. It was outside my normal book writing experience, but I really enjoyed working on it a lot.
Very cool.
And I hope readers enjoy it too.
Yeah, very, very cool. Okay, so I have like 8 million questions for you, but we are running out of time here because you are a good talker, Don. I'll give you that. You are. What did you call yourself? Gabby Gabor?
Gabby Gabor.
But very interesting, very interesting. So let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
So If you could talk to the high school senior you, what would you tell yourself?
If I could say that again, please.
If you could talk to the high school you,
Oh, the high school you.
yeah, what would you
Yeah,
what would you
okay.
tell yourself? What would
That's a good question. Well, the high school me was kind of I really didn't focus very much on uh, specific goals. I mean, my father was an engineer, and he always used to say, "Don, what is your 5-year plan?" I said, "Nah, I don't know what I may be doing in the next 5 minutes. How am I supposed to know what my 5-year plan was?" So, I mean, I was more interested in entertaining my fellow students and chasing girls and just goofing around with my East Side boy buddies. So, I guess what I would tell myself is, learn how to apply yourself early so that you know what it takes to really achieve what you want out of life. And that lesson I kind of had to, I didn't really learn as a high school student. It took me, I guess I was a little behind the curve in terms of, career goal orientation at that point. So I think that's what I would tell myself. And I think when I'm coaching with younger people is, really see what you can accomplish. I mean, that's part of the job and being a student is to see what it takes to accomplish something. So that was a lesson that my parents kept telling me, Don, you need to focus and push harder. You have the ability, but you're not applying yourself. Ooh, boy, can I hear that? But it was true, it was true. So I guess I'm telling myself what my parents were telling me for years and years. And then when I published my first book, my mother says, I never knew you could write.
how funny.
So there you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Don. How can people get a hold of you if they want to contact you?
Well, there's several ways people can contact me. One, of course, is just through an email, and I'm happy to receive any questions at don@dongabor.com. That's my name, DON@DONGABOR.com. Or you can go to my website, dongabor.com. Or if you want to give me a telephone call, I answer my phone, 718
Sorry, go ahead.
768 0824. That's 718 768 0824. And I'm happy to answer any questions I can. And I guess if I can leave you with one last message is that if you can speak and you can write, your career opportunities are endless.
And Don, could you just play us out? Do you still have your musical instrument?
I do. You want to hear? This is called It's Time to Celebrate. I know you've been working late. That's why you never miss a day. You're out in all kinds of weather, networking and working together. That's what will make your business great. 'Cause when you collaborate, you are really cultivating relationships. And it's time to celebrate. Ooh, yeah, it's time to celebrate. And don't forget the network.
Fantastic. All right, Don. Thank you.
All right, Mike.
Okay, well, mahalo, Don. That was kind of fun to hear the ukulele at the end of the show. Don's a very talented guy. I enjoyed talking to him very much. I wanted to thank our sponsors. I want to thank IMEX America, of course, IMEX Frankfurt, all the IMEXs there are, the IMEX group. They're great. Thank you for sponsoring the show. Also wanted to thank 99 Designs. Great place to head over, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, but head on over there and get yourself get some kind of graphics done, some logos, business cards, banners, that kind of stuff. It really comes in handy, 99 Designs. If you want to support the show, use the affiliate link tinyurl.com/meetings99. That helps us out with bandwidth and that sort of thing. We kind of do this as a labor of love, really. But if you enjoy the show, try and support our sponsors. Please email me if you have any ideas for other people to interview for the show, or show ideas in general. Maybe you want to come on the show. Come on to the show. And also, if you could head on over to iTunes, be great if you left a review in iTunes for the Meetings podcast. It really helps the show along. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoyed that chat with Don. Check out his website. Pretty good website. Nice job, Don. And I will see you next time. I do appreciate you listening. I appreciate you. Contact me anytime. Thank you, and I will see you next time.
We appreciate and thank you for listening to the Meetings Podcast. Please email with any questions or comments to meetingspodcast@gmail.com. Meetings Podcast is sponsored by IMEX America, America's worldwide exhibition for incentive travel, meetings, and events. The Meetings Podcast theme music is brought to you by the Delgado Brothers, which can be found at delgadobrothers.com.